if you don't adopt this warrior mindset and this higher purpose, and all you're focused on is feeling good in the moment, that leads you to addiction, misery, unhappiness, social isolation, obesity. Like, it leads to all those things. It's the same thing. You have to have a greater cause in life for yourself about how you're going to impact other people. And you have to organizationally decide what this means so that they can be more efficient and they get to spend more time on doing the things that matter to them. Boom, boom. There's your mission. Let's roll.
My friend, Sean Patton. This is a stud coming at you right here. This guy is a ex-Green Beret, jiu-jitsu world champion, plus jiu-jitsu studio owner, podcast host of Leadership After Hours. He's the author of A Warrior's Mindset, The 6 Keys to Greatness, a sought-after speaker, and today he's going to talk about the thing I don't talk about enough, and that's leadership. And he's going to talk to us about what's missing in our current leadership process, how to fix it, and he'll even go into detail about how entrepreneurship has been harder than the special forces. Listen in. Do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks. What a lot of people don't know about you, obviously, that I know, is that you're also an author, a podcast host, and a speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing, I normally don't ask this, but your background is so friggin' varied. Give me the really Cliff Notes version of kind of what you started doing military wise and how that got you to where you are right now.
Yeah, I'll give you the Cliff Notes for sure. So from a small town in Kansas, grew up a single mom, went into West Point to become an officer, went into infantry. That's what brought me here to the Middle Tennessee area. So I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky in the 101st Airborne Division. I was a infantry rifle platoon leader and scout and sniper platoon leader. And then I went to Special Forces Assessment Selection, got selected, 2 years of training, got my Green Beret, happened to get stationed back at Fort Campbell at 5th Special Forces Group. I was lucky enough to command 2 different, we call them operational detachments, 2 Green Beret teams. And after 10 years as an officer, I decided I was going to get out. And I was never the gun guy or the gear guy or whatever. Right. It was, everyone has, whether it's the military or not, you've got stuff about your job you love and the stuff you put up with. For me, what I loved about what I did was leadership, was people and solving difficult problems. I just love that. It's always my passion has been leadership. And so I knew I wanted to take these. I knew that I had lessons, obviously, in those 14 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
that I wanted to bring over. But I also knew enough to say, I also know nothing about business. Like, go figure, there's not a lot of digital marketing classes at West Point. Okay, at least not when I was there. So they knew nothing about business, never been in business. And so I didn't want to be the military officer go out and says, all right, business leaders, like, let me tell you about real leadership, because I don't understand their situation be different. So for me, it was, that's what I want to do, but I don't feel I'm qualified yet. So what is the quickest way for me to become qualified to do that and not just have the credentials, but learn lessons, test my theories, prove it to myself, learn more, make as many mistakes as possible. Well, as you well know, one of the fastest way to make as many mistakes as possible is be an entrepreneur. So I decided to, get a formal education in business. So I got my MBA from UNC Chapel Hill, and then I started my first company, and things went well. Things didn't go well. I ended up having to close it. I went through a bankruptcy. I lost everything. I started over. And that's when I started Legion Jiu-Jitsu, the jiu-jitsu company. And after a few years, I got it to that point where it was self-sustainably profitable. So 6 years later, I was kind of like, check. And that's when I started Stronger Profits and wrote a Warrior's Mindset and really set off on my current mission and path and passion, which is sort of leading what I'm calling the modern conscious leader movement and a warrior's mindset, and trying to bring that more into business and organizational culture, that fulfillment and profitability are intrinsically linked and not two separate things. So everything else now is just about forwarding that message and getting that into our culture and communities and businesses.
When you say consciously leadership movement, what do you mean?
So conscious leadership is about leadership, about purpose. It's about whole person leadership. It's about focusing on the we and not the me when it comes to leadership, right? It's about the collective, it's about the mission, and it's about doing it in an ethical way and a meaningful way that creates fulfillment and purpose. I like to say that if it's done well, it creates fulfillment, abundance, and freedom.
When you're looking at, so you wrote a book, a great, really cool, different way to look at things book, A Warrior's Mindset. what is one of the first things you tell us in your book about leadership that, especially right now, we hear tons and tons of leadership, but having heard you speak about it, what's one of those first 6 things that you tell folks that's probably not the same that they've been hearing?
So the first thing is, why a warrior's mindset, right? Because if you're talking about, well, this is leadership at a digital ad agency, or this is leadership, this is a manufacturer. We're like, we're not warriors. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm not a Green Beret dude.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the problems, right? Is that people get intimidated by that. They don't identify immediately with the term warrior. So the first thing I do is, say, wait, you're a warrior whether you believe it or not, because we're all the descendants of warriors, right? And I mean, if we're being honest, we're the descendants of conquerors. We're the descendants of imperialists. We're the hunters, the guys. If our ancestors, if they were too scared to get out of the cave, or they were too scared to fight for their tribe and family, or to, when food got scarce, to move into new territory and take it, we didn't descend from those. Those people didn't procreate.
They're not around. They died on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, they did not. Yeah, you have died of dysentery.
That's right.
It's like So. And not only that, like from a historical and genetic standpoint, I'm like, no, it's just who you are. Okay. But that plays itself out, because that it sounds bad, but we're beasts of burden. We have to work to experience fulfillment. We have to work. If you think about everything in your life that means the most to you, every accomplishment, anything that you would brag about or feel passionate about in your life, you worked for, right? Like being a good spouse or partner is freaking hard, but it's worth it. Being a good father, a good wife, is worth it. Creating a company that impacts the world, or doing any of these things are hard, and they get fulfillment because they're hard. And I mean, we could nerd out on the difference between dopamine and serotonin receptors and how this goes. We could go super deep on this, but we don't really need to. What you need to understand is, to me, a warrior means one thing. A warrior is someone who fights for a noble cause greater than themselves. A warrior is someone who fights for a noble cause greater than themselves. And to me, it's binary, right? You're either doing that or you're not.
Or you don't, yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then what you're doing is you're making decisions based on what's going to cause me the least discomfort in the moment. And that is a path to addiction. That is a path to emptiness. That is a miserable creature, as John Stuart Mill calls it. Someone who feels that there's nothing worth fighting for other than their own safety, and is a miserable creature who will only be kept free through the efforts of greater men than themselves. And so that is a life of misery and instant gratification. And so when you explain it that way, that's a differentiating factor. It's first to understand you are a warrior down to the genetic level, to the cellular level, in your soul, whatever you want to call it, in your reward system, everything in you is a warrior. And you need to embrace that, because it's the only path to fulfillment. And once you embrace that warrior mindset, you can start on the path to a noble cause and lead others to accomplish the same thing.
So let's say we do that, and I'm the owner president of an IT consulting firm that's like me and 3 dudes, and I've struggled figuring out, they're believing I'm a warrior, but the way you explained it makes total sense. All right, I buy in, I'm a warrior. I'm diving into code every day. I'm networking stuff together. Doesn't matter if I'm wearing glasses, playing Dungeons and Dragons, I'm a warrior. So what's the next step?
So first we have to learn how to lead ourselves, right? So that's the 6 keys to greatness. Just to run through them, I know we don't have time to go through them, but perspective and gratitude is the foundation at step 1. Internal locus of control, right? Which is we're in control of our futures and our actions. So taking ownership of your actions or inactions in your future. Mm-hmm. North Star theory, creating a purpose that creates fulfillment that impacts other people. Self-discipline, right? Again, you could be on
that's a big
your
one.
couch playing Dungeons and Dragons and think you're a warrior all day. And that doesn't matter. You have to have the self-discipline to actually do it. Then perseverance, because when you shift and accept you're a warrior, and you shift from instant gratification and the next goal, and as soon as I get this car, that's my goal. And then you get the car, you're like, I'm still not fulfilled. Now what, right?
Still not happy.
You're still not happy. It's again, that's the difference between dopamine and serotonin, if you want to get technical about it. And so dopamine, a dopamine activity is something that you don't have to create for or work for, or impacts other people. And that pathway in your brain is It creates tolerance. So that's the reason if you get a little bit of hit of sugar, you need more sugar to feel the same, or a little bit of drug, or
that's why when people start doom scrolling, they've got to go from TikTok to Instagram to their Fox News to MSNBC
until you're just miserable and burnout, right? But serotonin, right? Serotonin comes from accomplishment, and it's not, we don't create a tolerance for it. So that's true happiness. That's about relationships, connection, achievement. And the beautiful thing about that is you can't OD on happiness. You can't OD on fulfillment, right? You can't get addicted in the sense that you need more of it to feel more of it, because it's actually down again. It's in your brain. This is neuroscience, right? Sure. And so
those people live longer. The sad people never make it. You can see an old grumpy person, but they don't make it long. The happy folks are there, the 85, 90 years old.
And this is like the happiness study. If you just look up the happiness study on Harvard, you'll see this all over the place, because they just released in the last year an update. But it's the longest running study on like true happiness. They've been running since like the 30s. So we're on like the second generation of these people. They followed through a whole lifetime. And if they look at every single factor, like socioeconomic status, where they lived, what they did, everything, there are some interesting things in there. But there's one that permeates everything that is undeniably the one differentiator between people who are happy in like a fulfillment sense, not in a moment sense, and those who aren't. And it's the quality of their close relationships. Ooh. So we're tribal creatures by nature, right? That's why our North Star, a fulfilling purpose has to be about impacting other people. It can't be about self-centered gratification. It's not just about getting the younger wife, or the bigger car, or the bigger house, or the nicer car, or whatever, making $100,000. As soon as you make $100,000, if that's all it's about, you're gonna want 100 more, or you're not gonna be happy, right? So it has to be about impacting other people. So the first 5 are all about you, right? And so you go through the first 5. That's self-leadership. Then once you work on yourself and you learn how to lead yourself, now you're ready to lead other people. Now you're ready to be a conscious leader, right? Now you're ready to be a whole person leader. So the first thing I would tell that person is make sure you get a plan together. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. We have to be on the journey. So make up your plan, make sure you're good, and you've got a plan, you've got a North Star. And then when you get to the leadership side of that, this warrior side, this fighting for a noble cause greater than yourself, what is the purpose, the big vision, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal, whatever you want to call it, the North Star of your company. And I'll tell you, I actually was with a client yesterday. He's a CEO of a new company, but his old company, he talked about how they had this robust, growing company that was doing good things, but they would do leadership meetings and all they would talk about is revenue. All they was talk about is we're going to hit these numbers. We're going to hit that. And they talk to the whole leadership team, and that's not inspiring or motivating. That doesn't get people to do extra. You're creating a very transactional, greedy company, and those companies are not going to make it. So it's not just about financial incentive alignment inside of a company, but it's about purpose alignment. And so what I would tell them is talk with your team. If you haven't already, craft a vision about what you're going to do with this company. Or maybe it is about making revenue, but we're going to take the revenue and we're going to do this for our community, or we're going to invest in our people.
What does it mean long-term other than just money?
It has to be about that. Because if you're just like, how can I make the most money as possible? Be a cartel.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's why not, or just go be a scamster, go be a hacker, go steal stuff. Right. Like, or be a scammer. Like if it's just about money, that's what those people are. Those people are just about money. And that's what it leads to. Right. And it just like that is no different than for yourself. If you don't adopt this warrior mindset and this higher purpose, and all you're focused on is feeling good in the moment, that leads you to addiction, misery, unhappiness, social isolation, obesity. Like it leads to all those things. It's the same thing. You have to have a greater cause in life for yourself about how you're going to impact other people. And you have to organizationally decide what this means. And maybe that means we're going to provide the best service in IT and networks to really great companies so that they can be more efficient and they get to spend more time on doing the things that matter to them. Boom, boom. There's your mission. Let's roll.
So you're doing this coaching, you're speaking, you're working with people. I have to assume I've worked in every kind of environment, entrepreneurially, obviously, in a college, higher education setting. I've worked in the Fortune 500. I've worked for a big franchisor. The only time anybody ever wants to talk about leadership is when sugar honey iced tea has hit the fan and everything's gone haywire, and the leaders want to start blaming other people. So then they start bringing in the leadership coaches and everybody else to tell them what they're doing wrong. I know you well enough to know that doesn't work. You know it doesn't work. So even if it's just an entrepreneur, and it's the dude I just made up. Why I picked IT, I don't know. The dude I just made up with his 2-3 employees, things got a little sideways. He might think he needs leadership, or she. Usually they don't. They think everybody else does, or whether it's a Fortune 500. What do you go in and tell these folks when they bring you in to fix everybody else?
So I have these, like what I call the 4 leadership truths. And these are some values that I find to just be universal. And if a company or an individual client doesn't agree with me, I don't work with them. I mean, if we don't align on values, then what are we doing here? You know?
What are they?
So the one that I was just mentioning there, right, is that it has to be buy-in from the top down, right? The amount of times I've gone in, this is kind of what you're alluding to, I think, is the amount of times that I've gone into a company to do a leadership workshop, and, you know, the senior leader, right, of the company comes down, introduces me, tells me we're there to do work and we're going to do all these great things and what we're going to talk about and all that. And then after he introduced me, walks out the door. Is crazy, right? Like that's nuts. And so that we have to have top-down buy-in. That doesn't mean, so I've created, and what I'm really working on, and I'm actually I'm releasing to my first clients right now, is the Stronger Leaders Academy. And the Stronger Leaders Academy is a result of the last several years of encountering a lot of the problems you're talking about here. Uh-huh. It's you want the consultant to come in, here's the answer, walk away, or do a 2-day retreat. And now
that's my people.
Yeah.
That's them overnight.
We're going to do a 2-day retreat, and we're all going to get together in the woods, and we're going to go back, and now leadership, check, next thing. Yeah. Right. Magic. And so one of the other leadership truths is that leadership and human development is a core competency of the business. So a reason you exist is to develop your people. Because if it's not a core competency, right? I know you do a lot with the SBA, and you have build business plans and do that, and you identify, what are my core competencies? Like, who am I as a business? If leadership or development of any kind is an extra thing you do when you have time and extra money, or it's an emergency, it's never going to work. It has to be part of why you exist, is to grow and develop people. And the workforce, the modern workforce, is demanding this, right? The modern workforce,
100%. That's why everybody went home.
Exactly. And so what this also solves, though, I mean, this isn't like a sales call, but what it also solves is that hybrid or modern work environment, right? Because what I also see is maybe you do have some good leaders and good managers, but they've always worked in person. And I've heard this over and over again, where they're like, how do I lead and create a leadership culture when all my people are gone? Right? When I don't see them, because it's always about the walk around leadership, which is a great term, but we have to reimagine that now. Of just walk in, check in, how you doing, how the kids, little water cooler talk, right? Like all that's like soft skill stuff. How do you do that now? You have to be way more intentional about creating a strong leadership culture than we used to when you're in a hybrid or remote environment. So this is a software solution, right? A software-based solution where the individual lessons are self-paced and online through a software. But then at the end of each module, there's a forced leader interaction. So you're going to do your self-development. And let's just say you're doing level 1, which is self-leadership.
Sure.
And so you're going to go through and you're going to work on self-awareness, and you're going to talk about gratitude and like how you're going to grow that. You're going to do all that yourself. But then in order to move forward to the next thing, you're going to sit down and have a counseling session for 30 minutes, 45 minutes with your immediate supervisor about, hey, here's what I've learned. Here's how I think I can implement it in my life. And the supervisor can be like, okay, here's how I can help you. Let's partner on this. And then you both set up a way it has to go 2 ways, right? We have to provide that coaching and accountability, but we have to also know what their plan is for self-development. It's like, well, I really want to work on this skill and develop my mindset and journal here. All right, well, I'll tell you what, instead of coming in at 9, why don't you start work at 9:30? And when you sit down, let's take the first 30 minutes and you do that self-work, right? I mean, the amount of, is there anyone that's so busy in the remote job that they could cut out a half hour to do self-work and they're still not accomplishing it? I don't think so. Yeah. Right. And not only that, but everything shows you that when you do that and you get buy-in and you show you care about that person and you're invested in their development and you're going to hold them accountable to do it. So, you know, maybe you don't look at their journal, but maybe they log in and they have to come and look you in the eye and be like, hey, how many hours you journal this week? And now as a leader, I'm holding them accountable to their own development. That's what people want. So, and we make it so it doesn't take a bunch of time, but that answers the core competency, right? And it's integrated in everything that they're doing. And it's a way to take the software in the remote environment and then connect it in the real world through these interactions. And the other biggest thing we have them do is the 2 C's. So if I came into any company and they don't want to do the leadership academy, they don't want to do overshoot, whatever. They say, what is, if you ask me for that company, what is the quickest way, the highest impact thing we can do? It's communications and counseling. If you can get communication down where everyone understands how to communicate with each other, what intervals, through what ways, that I have this thing called the 5 Bravo communication method, which is the perfect way to give someone a task or ask someone to do something, especially orally. Task, purpose, intent, in-state, timeline, back brief. If I've had clients change their RFPs, their request for projects and within divisions, their form now is 5 Bravo because it covers everything you need. And so if we communicate, think about every company you've worked with, which you've worked with a bunch. What percentage of their problems and inefficiencies are the result or the direct consequence of poor communication?
A very high percentage. And it's not just, that's everything. That's not just them. It's me and my wife or me and my kids, or you and I might miscommunicate and not get on the same page as to what we're going to talk about or what we're going to do. It's high.
It's everything. Yeah. And I love the fact you brought that up, because here's the thing, right? About leadership. You talk about conscious leadership, to bring this back around, right?
Whole leadership. Sorry, go ahead.
Conscious leadership and whole person leadership, right? Is that development when I do help you and show you, hey, this is how we communicate at work because it's the most efficient way to communicate. Then you do communicate. I've had clients with a major company, Fortune 500 company, that I did a 3-month training with. And then I did some one-on-ones with their most senior folks in between sessions. And I was talking with them about what if we did 5 Bravo. And one guy said, I'll tell you what, it's helped a little at work. I'm still working on it. I'm still integrating it. It's like, my relationship with my 13-year-old son has never been better.
Oh,
because he's effectively communicating what needs to be said. Right. And back and forth. So now if you're working in that IT company and a big project comes down and, man, the workload's really tough right now. We're trying to push through, right? And we're trying to expand and get new people, and things are hard because startups are hard and we're growing. But this is a transaction and someone says, hey, you want to come work for me? I'll pay you $5,000 extra a year. You're gone. But if you had that leader who sat down and all of a sudden your relationship with your spouse and your 13-year-old son has never been better, you're happier and content because they spent time helping you develop into a better human, a better communicator, you're not leaving that job. So bring this back to fulfillment and profitability. True leadership creates both. And I'm a firm believer that, especially as technology continues to improve things from the management, like just KPIs, trackers, all that stuff, right? There's so much management, operations software. We can figure that out with AI. That's all done. But so what's going to differentiate? What's the greatest competitive advantage between different companies moving forward? I believe it's leadership now. And all studies basically show that. I feel like Jim Collins, Good to Great, right? Level 5 leadership. Like, you look at what made some companies over 100 years go from good to great. Leadership. It's every time it's leadership, right? And so not only is that true in terms of leadership and profitability, right? But when you have great leadership and you create fulfillment at work, like I said, that means that person is not turning over for you. So your turnover goes down, your recruitment costs go down, your employee engagement and productivity go up, and that person is going to work. So they're working harder for less money. What does that mean? Higher profits. Hence the names, stronger leaders, stronger profits.
Look at us. Well, and speaking of taglines, in terms of doing more by doing less, how do you talk to somebody? Let's talk about them more of and it could be at a Fortune 500 or entrepreneurial level. And you said it earlier, they don't want to make, and I don't either. I'm in the same boat. I don't want to make time for leadership because I'm too busy worried about marketing and trying to figure out what the next project's going to be. And it gets pushed aside. So what do people need to be doing to do more leadership, what should they be doing less of? How can they not fit it in, but make it a priority?
So what you need to be able to do. So one exercise I'll have companies do is, and this is like a quintessential like MBA conversation, right? But it doesn't translate to the real world for most companies. What's the difference between management tasks and leadership tasks? Because we'll have this conversation. Oh, I mean, if you want to be, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
You answer it.
Okay.
Because if we're in Sunday school, I just yell Jesus and they tell me it's right. But I don't know if I'm going to say that now.
So management, right, is about efficiency of systems. Okay. So you could sit down with a company. I'll have companies do this, right? We'll lay out what are all your management tasks that need to get done, right? That's KPIs, metrics, trackers, I don't know, HR regs, time off, like performance, all that stuff is management. Okay. And it's important because management, increasing the efficiency within the current capacity that you have is the quickest way to move the needle, right? This month, leadership may not get you much. This quarter may not get you much, right? But management is gonna do that. So leadership tasks, developing people, leadership creates new human potential that wasn't there before by changing the way people think about themselves, the organization, and the world. Okay, that's a long-term play, but I would equate this to your health. Like, so exactly like today, if you eat like crap and don't work out, is that really going to affect you long-term? Yeah, probably not, right? So you might default to working extra hours, not sleeping, not eating right, not doing that stuff, maybe having quality time with your kids and your spouse. You do that 5 years, you're done, right? You're going to be diseased. You're going to be depressed. You're going to have no family. Everything's going to be gone. But man, you were really productive day to day. That's the difference between management and leadership. Yep. And so what happens is they'll have this at a high level conversation, the difference between management and leadership, or what is leadership training. But when it comes to execution, they throw them together. How many times is management and leadership training can put together or things, right?
Sure,
and
every time.
If you throw them together, especially if you haven't created a system specifically for leadership, you will always default to management tasks because there's never enough time in the day. And if you look at like, all right, do I want to sit down, review Charles's past performance, where he's headed, what we talked about last counseling, where he might head, and sit down and just have a conversation about where he's at in his life, what he's looking for in this role, how I can assist him, how his life is going. Maybe I had him listen to a podcast or read a book or do something like that or whatever. Or I can make a few more sales calls, or I could look at his metrics, or I could push him forward. If it's a choice, if you're putting those two things together, then you're going to pick the management task. It's like, I don't know if there's two terms for it: the Eisenhower matrix or the urgent important matrix. Are you kind of familiar with that?
The Covey matrix for sure. That urgency versus importance.
Urgency versus importance, right? There's 4 quadrants, right? Yep. So here's the thing: is leadership is quintessential quadrant 2. It's not urgent, but it is important.
Correct.
Until it isn't. Just like working out today, and eating right isn't urgent, right? But if you don't make time for health today, you're going to make time for sickness later. That's guaranteed.
That's right. It'll become urgent later in the wrong way.
So to your point, then that's the companies that call me in like, man, our culture is toxic. Our turnover is high. We don't know what's going on. It's because they did not focus in quadrant 2. Leadership and human development is quadrant 2. Relationships are quadrant 2, right? And you mentioned like, it's so funny how I actually equate a lot of times leadership is like parenting, right? Or being married or having a spouse or a partner. It's 24/7. I'm your leader all the time, right? You call me at 5:30 and you tell me that your family's sick or something happened with your kids and you're not sure what to do. And I'm your leader inside your company. I'm there for you, right?
Right.
Because I'm here to lead you. So it's 24/7. And what you do is far more important than what you say, just like parenting, right? So you can say all day, I want you to eat right and work out and go to your school. But if you sit on the couch and you eat like garbage and you don't demonstrate those skills, guess what that kid's going to do when they get a chance, right? Or if you're like, you shouldn't drink and do drugs and you drink and do drugs in front of them, guess what's going to happen, right?
I learned it from watching you.
You, Dad, right? So leadership's the same way. And that's why it comes back to self-leadership. So what I would tell them is that we have to look at what is your process. If you're going to do nothing else, how are you communicating effectively? And set up a regular counseling program where you're sitting down once a month informally and once a quarter formally with a written form and you're going over, why are you here? Why are you doing this?
Right.
Why are you working hard? And then, and because otherwise you get that overemphasis on ROI. Well, we're going to make more money. We're going to do this stuff. This person's like, I don't care. What I really care about is I want to be done at 5:30 because my son or daughter is 16. I only have 2 more years to go to their games. And so you can talk about, we're going to drive ROI. We're going to recruit these. Like, I just want to be done at 5:30, bro. You know, but if you never ask them, how are you going to know that? But if I talk to you and I say, Charles, like, why do you hear what's most important to you with your life and satisfaction? And how can I help you to accomplish this purpose alignment that I talked about? You might be like, oh, I just want to have a little freedom in my work day, and I want to be done at 5:30 because I want my daughter's in softball and I only have 2 more years.
That's right.
All right. I'll tell you what, what if we let you start at 8:30 instead of 9 so you could be done at 5 and take your lunch break, and then you don't miss a single game. And by the way, we'll make you last on the list for any travel. That would be great. Guess what? That person's not leaving that job.
That's right.
That person is going to work there, even if someone offers them more money. So again, we could take our altruistic hat off and talk profitability, or we could put it back on and talk about being a true leader of human beings and higher calling. But those things are actually intrinsically linked, and people are starting to figure that out. I mean, I've read so many articles recently, right, about people and bosses fighting about coming back to the office or not, and what that means and all that stuff.
Yeah. And
it depends. For different companies could do things different ways to different cultures. I'm a firm believer that for every mission, there's a perfect task org and a perfect culture. And that's going to vary by what that mission is for that company. But what we're finding is that people will work for 8.5% less if they get to work from home and have that flexibility. And you don't have office space and you don't have rent. So what you're saying is, actually, I'm going to have to pay my people more, and I'm potentially going to have to get lease office space and get all this office stuff. And then all my people are going to waste time commuting in because I can't figure out how to lead someone through a computer, because I don't want to take the time to actually set up an effective system. And I just want to fly by the seat of my pants. And I'll tell you, that's fine. But those companies they're going to have a hard time competing against the companies that put in that time and effort on a longer time scale.
So we're getting to the end here. Just metric ton of smart, good information. You got to self-develop, self-lead. You got to actually care about people. You have to put in the time and effort and the energy now, not just the cheap tasks that make you feel good and check a box. So to switch gears real quick, talking about looking at yourself, and I usually throw most folks as semi-softball, but in your own life, what do you need to be doing less of right now, Sean?
That's a really good question. So I just went through a huge sort of redo inside my own company because we were trying to do just too much. We were trying to do too many projects. My wife and I are trying to start a family. Hopefully that's what we've decided this year. And
man, I've got a kid I'll lend you.
All right. Well, we'll talk prices afterward. So in my head, I got it in my head. That means my company needs to be like my other company, self-sustainably profitable. I'm making 6 figures off it, all this stuff, and I can walk away and all that stuff functions with the team built out and all of our processes by next March. And so I set a pace for myself to try to hit that. And
I watched you.
And luckily, I caught myself early. I caught the leading indicators because I've done this to myself in my first company that failed, where I ran myself in the ground and made myself sick and literally physically sick, panic attacks, all that stuff. I said this before, but I mean, I spent 22 months of my life in combat and never had a panic attack. And I had 2 in my first 3 years as an entrepreneur.
How about
that?
Yeah.
Because there's no redeployment. There's no one protecting you and saying, hey, sir, go to sleep. You know, I remember being in Afghanistan and my team sergeant would come up and be like, sir, it'd be like 2 a.m. I'm trying to plan and write reports and stuff. He's like, sir, you got to go to sleep, man. We need you tomorrow. And there's nobody doing that. And there's no redeployment. The mission doesn't end. And so you have to learn to self-regulate. So it's a long-winded way of saying what I need to do less of is, or maybe it's not less of, but I've reshifted my priorities to find what in Buddhism they call the middle way, right? I need to find balance and realize it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I need to give myself grace, and I need to embrace the process and be in the moment, because I got myself wrapped around this hard imaginary scenario. and started burning myself out again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to do just less in terms of my pace. I need to enjoy the moment. I literally wrote on my board over here, I have the journey is life, stay in love with the process, right? Like nobody wins at life. We're all going in the ground, and all life is a series of moments. It's a process. And so if you don't stay in love with every moment and stay in love and appreciate every process that you're doing in the moment, it's always about something in the future. You're going to live your whole life that way and always live for this thing that never actually happens. And so that's been a huge lesson, not maybe a new lesson, but a refinement for me in my own life of setting realistic expectations and just do less day to day and make sure I do more of taking care of my own relationships and my own mental health. And I've made that switch, and it's been profound.
Well, that answered the second part of the question. What will that let you do more of? And you just told us. So that was fan-dang-tastic. Sean, how can somebody find you or get in touch with you, my friend?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Sean Patton. I'm sure it'll be in show notes. Also, if you're a company interested in improving or developing your leadership development program, Stronger Leaders, Stronger Profits is the way to go. If you go to SeanPattonSpeaks.com, that's where you can find me for any keynote speaking opportunities. And then, please give us a listen at leadershipafterhours.com or Leadership After Hours on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We just started our second season this week. I'm not sure when this will come out, but here in the first part of August, we just started our second season. I actually released the interview with General Retired Scott Brower, who was my group commander when I was in Special Forces. He was also one of the first Americans in Afghan theater after 9/11, one of the first 100 Americans there, and facilitated that infiltration of all the Green Beret teams into the Northern Alliance. He also led the Tennessee Anti-COVID Task Force for the governor, and now he runs a $25 million endowment for military scholars at Vanderbilt University. And we have a great talk about leadership, so go check that out.
Good deal, Sean. Hey, brother. I appreciate you coming on today, man.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it. Always good seeing you, man.
Yes, sir. Wait. Don't run off just yet. Do me a big favor. Hit the little plus sign to subscribe. Scroll down wherever you are and leave a very honest 5-star review and tell other people why they should be listening. And if you don't, an angel may in fact lose its wings. True story. Have a great day.